So you've been living someone else's life, or you feel like you have a hunch that this is something that has been happening. Well, welcome to Namaste Club. Welcome. This is my first video of this channel, and I'm super excited to start talking about people that have a feeling that they're living someone else's life or living in someone else's shoes or clothes or identity or shadow. So let's talk and dive deep. So here are the signs you feel like you're in the danger zone. You're in the danger zone and you start questioning. Now we're going to talk about questioning. Let's hold that thought for 1 minute. Just bear with me. But first of all, right now, you are not satisfied, which is a good place to be in. All right? Questioning too. We're going to talk about that, but hang on. First and foremost, there is no passion. Every day meshes and blends into the other day. You feel like repetitiveness, which sometimes in spirituality and in life, repetition is part of everything. It's part of music, for instance. But we're not talking about that. And you don't feel satisfied. You just don't feel satisfied with the choices that you've made in life. Maybe you married someone you're not really into. Maybe you lost attraction, to someone else. Or you chose a 9-to-5 and you're sitting all day, and you bought this standing desk, happened to me, and I just had energy so much so that I had to take walks every day. And it was post-pandemic, obviously, the 2021, but things are basically stagnant, not fun, no joy, no passion. The other sign is someone told you what to pursue. Maybe it was a little murmur or a little seating with your parents or with a close friend of yours back in the day that told you you should do engineering, or you should do, I don't know, teaching, or I don't know. It doesn't matter what the field is. I'm just giving you examples. Of course, I'm not booing on any of those careers because they have meaning. But, you know, the regular lawyer, doctor, it doesn't matter what. And now you're questioning, which is a very, very amazing place to be in, my friend. I'm so excited for you. You need a question. And if you've come to this video, there's a meaning and there's a reason, because I believe that everything is connected. And maybe you too. So we're here together and we're having a little chat here. And, you know, on this nice sunny day, wherever you guys are, this is a great time to be alive and to question and figure out what it is that you truly want. And first of all, even if you don't know what you want, first of all, list the things you don't want. I don't want to be stuck in a 9-to-5 forever. I don't want to live on pension money. I don't want to, you know, be able to not own my house and pay mortgage at the end, and then live till I'm 80 and still pay mortgage. Or I don't know what it is truly that you don't want. But usually those are the societal structures that have been shoved in our brains to basically believe, to think that we believe in those, to think that this is something that we should pursue. So what it is that you're questioning right now, because questioning is super important and you shouldn't be afraid of it. A lot of people in this stage will be actually very afraid, and they will say, oh, well, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to question it, but I'm not going to do anything about it. And then comes action or disaction. So let's first question, okay? Because we're in the beginning of the video and we want to figure out and first understand the problem and understand why on earth am I feeling like I've lived, or I'm living, maybe you're in your 30s, 40s, I'm living someone else's life. Someone told me, or there's a thought in my head that left me in this space where I have to pursue someone else's dream. Maybe it could be from your parents, it could be from a close friend of yours, maybe you're a copycat, or I don't want to call you copycat, but maybe you saw someone else's very quick success and you're like, okay, I'm going to do that. But are you really happy with that? Is that your path? Now, this is the question. Sorry, we need to ask. Is that your path? I believe truly as a human being that every person has their own path. I really do. And a lot of the times it doesn't seem like it because a lot of people are doing the same thing. a cord in the machine, and we're seeing now in these days that those machines are being broken down because the cords are being automated with AI right now and technology. And that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, maybe you got laid off, or maybe you had this little friction phase where it made you question. Maybe you went through a spiritual awakening, for instance, which happened to me, for instance. So let's dive into the danger, because this is the part where we actually want to say goodbye to the danger. We see the danger, we understand the danger, and we don't want to stay in this place. We want to understand it and actually ask why. And that is the next question. But first, the danger is that you're going to be very bitter. You're going to be bitter if you stay this current path that you're in, all right? So the true danger of staying where you are is being bitter, is being complacent, is being too comfortable where you are, is not experiencing true joy or maybe even true love if you stay with the same person you're not really into. That's why a lot of people divorce, for instance. And then you've reached the point in your life where you're 70 and you're like, oh, I should have done this different. I should have done that different. That's something I think Jeff Bezos said. He said, can I look at myself, or Steve Jobs? I'm actually mixing the both, because one of them said something about looking yourself at the mirror and imagining yourself when you're 70, and then figuring out, okay, is this a life that I actually feel comfortable leaving behind? Is this my legacy? Is this a life well lived? It doesn't have to be so big. Not everyone is meant to be so famous, so grand, so huge. But I think it's about feeling the joy. So let's dive in. Now that we talked about the danger and we understand the danger and we see the danger, we see the problem, we see the elephant in the room, we can actually say goodbye to it and figure out a reason why we feel like we're living someone else's life, and dive deeper to actually get to the point where we carve a new path and we figure out a new path, and we do that soul search that we actually needed to do earlier on. But there is no right or wrong, because this is life. Okay, no one comes with a book and tells you this is how you're gonna live your life. This is a path and you should do X, Y, and Z. Nothing is really linear. And I think that's something that you should keep in mind and not beat yourself up over it. Because the easiest path is to feel depressed, to feel like, oh, I made so many mistakes. I'm in my 50s, I'm in my 60s, I'm in my 40s. It doesn't matter what age you are. Even if you're seeing this and you're 70, who cares? You have still so much to live, so much to change and grow. I believe in you. So let's begin. Why are you living in someone else's life? Can you think about this question? Because we don't want to spend a minute more living someone else's life. We don't want to be in someone else's shoes. They can be too big for us, too small for us. Maybe you're meant for more. You have higher potential, and you've known this all along. You've known this because you felt this little inner light, an inner calling, and an inner nudge. And that is where we start carving ourselves a new path when we go within. Another whole other video about how to find your purpose. However, let's still dive into why. It's really important we do that. Is it shame? What society will say about you? Is it when you go to a networking event and you say, oh, I'm jobless right now, or I'm waitressing, I'm working on a business, I'm not actually a finance bro, I'm not an accounting person, I'm a singer, I'm an actor, I love cutting wood. It doesn't matter what you're into. I'm into spirituality. I want to be a healer. I want to be a therapist, maybe. I want to do psychodrama. It doesn't matter what it is. Maybe you want to tap into your feminine side a little bit more, your vulnerability, which is a whole other video as well. But there is some shame and there's some guilt around what you actually want and what society especially for men. I say it's harder for men. I'm gay. But there's also the point of approval. Will I get the approval? Because we're societal people. We want other people's approval. We want to feel, and this is part of how we are wired, that is natural. We can't change that. We can't live in isolation for too long. We need to see some external validation. But sometimes, for some people, external validation is going to be way too important. And that is the problem here. This is where we dive deeper and we dig deep. External validation is way too important where it shouldn't be. And when you go into your isolation phase, when you go into your hermit phase or night of the soul or dark night of the soul or whatever you want to call it, you feel like you start leaning upon your inner approval. Do I think this is a good idea that I want to be a masseuse, for instance, and not a finance bro? It doesn't matter what it is. That is just an example. So can I give myself validation? Can I give myself this okay? Like, you're doing great. Okay, this is my approval. And then maybe you chose someone else's life because that was the easy path. Because going to the path less traveled requires more risk, more courage, more rejection than any other path. And maybe you saw someone else do something very similar to what you're doing right now and they succeeded pretty fast, but you actually did not as they did or something like that. Or maybe you did, but you still feel like you're missing your joy, your passion, your meaning. So let's really think about that. And I actually suggest you take one day to think about this. Why is this happening to me? And figure it out. Maybe something that someone told you when you were a kid. Maybe it's your parents. Maybe it is a friend. It doesn't matter. But please spend time with this question before we move on to the next phase. So this is the almost final phase before the last phase. But this is the more practical, strategic phase, I would say. When you actually know the reason and you're like, okay, yeah, it's something I admit, it's something that my friend told me, it's something that my parents told me, it's something that I saw on TV. I felt it was very easy to go this route. It doesn't matter the reason, but now you have a reason, which is great, my friend. So you questioned and you're still questioning, okay? You found the reason why you feel like you're living in someone else's shoes or someone else's life. You understand the danger. You understand the cost of living someone else's life and continuing that route. Because then, I'll be very honest, usually what happens is you're going to get a wake-up call at some point. And maybe now is the wake-up call for you right now. I don't want to be fearful So how do you carve your own path? Now, this is not something that only one video can solve. However, at least you got to the right phase right now after you understood those past three things. And now you can start thinking about, okay, what do I do? What is my call to action here? Do I quit my job? Do I maybe stay a little bit more? And then I actually start pursuing, take a course, start reading about it, start asking people, how do I actually find the courage to do something? Before we actually do anything, what it is that thing that you want. And I think most of you or some of you probably know what that is. And there is an inner nudge. And it's usually something that has to do with something you've always wanted to do. Something you always had a leaning towards. Maybe some of you are really into food, maybe really into drinks, maybe into woodwork. I don't know what it is. Animals. It doesn't matter what it is. It's important that you start asking yourself, what excites me? What brings me joy? What was a childhood dream that I had? No one, I think, had a dream as a child of sitting on a desk all day long and doing computer work all day. I don't think that's a childhood dream. Let's be honest here. Not to poo on that as well. I have to be politically correct here. I mean, I worked in those jobs and I have a complete, respect for that as well, because they could be interesting. They could be really interesting.